Happy Monday, Dog Nation. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door today. Hope you had a great weekend. I know that I did. Looking forward to talking some Georgia football here today. I'm going to start the week in the show with what I think is a pretty bold prediction about how I think things will play out this upcoming season for Georgia. I think it's going to be fun. I think you'll like it. You may not totally agree, but I think we'll have fun with the conversation nonetheless. Apparently some big improvement already taking place for one of Georgia's early enrollees. We'll talk about that. It was a huge weekend, very successful for the sports other than football for the Dogs. We'll try to chronicle all of that. There's some big SEC news to get to as well. We'll try to touch all the bases, including our buddy John Stinchcomb coming up later on too. So we're glad to have you with us as DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door, begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So I'm going to start today's show with a little bit of a bold prediction. Now, let me try to explain to you kind of how we got to here in terms of making this prediction today. I joke about this a lot, that in our video portion, and really even on Twitter as well, for those of you that kind of interact with me on Twitter at DawgNation Daily, for the most part, we agree on like probably 85% of the things we talk about around here. You know, for the most part. Now, not everybody agrees with everything I say all the time. That's not what I'm trying to say. But for the most part, big picture, when it comes to Georgia football, we just end up agreeing on a lot of the same stuff, right? You know, whether it be what Georgia does well, what Georgia still needs to improve on. For the most part, we are kind of all in sort of a similar vein when it comes to that. So sometimes in the offseason, what ends up being kind of fun is to spend some time discussing some things we don't agree about. And sometimes that kind of veers into other directions around the SEC. And one of the things I've joked about in the past is with the people who either comment live on our videos, reach out to me on Twitter, or something along those lines, one of the areas in which I've kind of always had disagreement with my audience is the fact that I think that Texas A&M coach Jimbo Fisher is a pretty good coach, whereas a lot of our audience thinks he's kind of overrated. A lot of our audience thinks that, you know, Texas A&M's no big deal in the SEC West. We've kind of gone back and forth on that. Now, on Friday, the reason why I bring all this up is we discussed that more during our video comment section portion of the show. We were talking about the idea of when you look at the easier schedule that A&M plays this year, when you look at the talent overall that I think the Aggies have kind of put together under Jimbo, I think this is a top 10 team. I think this is a team that has that potential of going like, say, 11-1, something along those lines, having a very nice record. But would I go so far as to pick them to win the SEC West? Now, listen, not to come across as immodest here for a moment, but I've actually picked the winner of the SEC West 3 consecutive years, which may not sound like a great accomplishment when you look at some of my other predictions and how poorly they've worked out. The fact that I've got a winning streak of picking the SEC West winner, and it's been 3 different teams in these 3 years. It was LSU last year, it was Auburn in 2017, and Alabama in smack dab in between that in 2018. This is something I'd like to keep going. This is a streak that I'd like to keep alive, and so I want to make sure I guess, really focus in on this and make my best pick for the SEC West for 2020. With that in mind, as good as I think the Texas A&M can be this year, the honest truth is I don't see them unseating Alabama. I do see Alabama as winning this division this year. However, here's where things kind of come back around and get to Georgia. If Alabama really does win the SEC West in 2020, and I just said before I believe they will, A&M is good. I think that LSU takes a big step back this year. Too much lost off last year's national champion. I think Auburn's actually lost a good bit off of its defense. Too much for me to take them seriously as a real contender in the SEC West right now. The chief competition to the Crimson Tide is Texas A&M, but ultimately I do think Alabama wins that division. And if that happens, and when it does happen, as I said before, it presents a real opportunity for Georgia. Because what Georgia has a chance to do this year is not just allow Kirby Smart to become the first former Nick Saban assistant to beat his old boss on the field. But if Alabama were then to turn around and win the SEC West, that'd give Kirby Smart a chance to do that twice. And ultimately, when I look at the situation involving Georgia, when I look at the situation involving Alabama, that's exactly the way that I see this season playing out. I see Kirby Smart getting over the hump in a big way that he needs to, beating his old boss, Nick Saban, beating what has kind of become, even in a year like last year where Georgia didn't play Alabama, the arch nemesis of the Dogs in the SEC, not biggest rival, that's still Florida. but biggest nemesis has been Alabama. So Kirby Smart, I believe, is going to get a chance to and is going to fulfill the opportunity of actually beating Nick Saban twice in 2020. Now, what happens after that occurs? Well, I think that's going to be really, really fun. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But for now, let me just kind of deal with the magnitude of all of this. After all, we know that this is now the measuring stick by which Georgia is judged. It's won the SEC East 3 years in a row. It's been a fixture in the top 10. There's no shortage of big games. It's won a playoff game. There are not that many teams in the last few years that can say they've won playoff games. Georgia is one of those. I think it's, just 4 in the last however many years that have actually won playoff games. You kind of get the point here that Georgia's done plenty, but it's that measuring stick versus Alabama that's not quite where it needs to be. That measuring stick against the very best from the SEC West that for Georgia is not quite where it needs to be. In fact, if you go to last year's offseason, Kirby Smart was asked about that. This is, of course, after 2 consecutive losses at the end of seasons versus Alabama, 2018 SEC championship game, national championship game at the end of the 2017 season. Kirby was meeting some of the reporters, and it was, what do you need to do to get over that hump versus Alabama? Well, at the time, Smart didn't want to be very forthcoming about that, didn't want to talk about it too much, but it was the big question hanging over Georgia's head at the start of last season, and it is still, I think, a big question hanging over the Dogs' head for this season as well. This is what Smart said about that last summer.
You talk about a hump, you think about the little things that you can do better, the details, whether it's turnover, create turnovers. There's so many statistics that we can improve in that it's hard to pinpoint just one thing. I'm certainly excited about this team. I'm excited about the guys we got coming back. I love their work ethic. I love the spring we had, and I'm just excited to be able to coach them.
So at the time, Smart doesn't really reveal a whole lot of details about how it is that you beat a team like Alabama. He mentions turnovers, but you could really say that about any opponent in any game. Ultimately, though, in another conversation, apparently, Smart was a lot more willing to discuss what he believed the recipe for success was against the Crimson Tide, what they tried to do in the 2018 SEC Championship, and I believe what they're going to try to do again when these two teams play in September. And I think that when they play again in December, the recipe that Smart's going to still try to employ. Let me see if I can give you a little bit of insight on this. Cole Kubelik, SEC Network announcer, they would do those like Instagram live videos at the end of the night on Saturday nights during the season with Tom Hart and Jordan Rodgers, the former Vanderbilt quarterback, who's also now an SEC Network broadcaster. And on one of those videos last season during the year, Smart kind of mentioned, or at least Cole kind of mentioned what Kirby Smart's game plan was when it played Alabama. Now listen, if this was true for the old Georgia against the old Alabama, I think it's going to be even more true for this upcoming season when Georgia once again takes on the Crimson Tide. Why do I think that Georgia can and will beat Alabama not just once, but twice in the upcoming season? Well, let me let Cole Kubelik's description of Kirby Smart's game plan versus the Crimson Tide give us a little more insight onto that.
We talked to Kirby at Media Days, and he said our plan was to jam them all night, get them off their routes, disrupt the timing, and it worked. Now, they got pressure, too, which Georgia had not really done all of last year.
So Cole Kubelik says there that when Kirby Smart was playing against Alabama, the plan there was to jam at the line of scrimmage, defensive backs aggressive at the line of scrimmage, at the point of attack against the Alabama receivers. If that was the plan before, when Alabama still had Henry Ruggs and still had Jerry Jeudy, how much more is that going to be the plan here in 2020? When Georgia's secondary is probably better than it's ever been in the Kirby Smart era. Arguably the very best in the entire country. Senior safety in Richard LeCounte. Deep at the cornerback positions, guys like DJ Daniel and Tyreek Stevenson ready to take the next step. An incoming freshman like Keely Ringo looking for a chance to be on the field. Veteran presence of guys who've now played a good bit like Tyson Campbell and Eric Stokes on the other side. Guys that have shown they can jam at the line of scrimmage and they can run step for step with anybody. If that's what Georgia was doing back then, how much more is that going to be true now when the Georgia secondary is deeper than it ever has been and Alabama doesn't have a couple of the key weapons that it had and then offense and used to such great success, guys like Jerry Jeudy, guys like Henry Ruggs who are kind of on their way out the door, on their way to the NFL. The bottom line for me on all of this is I think this has a chance to be a very fun season for Georgia Bulldogs fans. This might be the kind of program-changing moment that Georgia's been building to over the last couple of years. And it would obviously be so appropriate, if that is indeed the case, for the opponent on the other side to be the old boss. the guy that in some ways mentored Kirby Smart, the guys that in some ways helped prepare Kirby Smart for the spot where he's in now. And Kirby Smart now has a chance to repay that favor by actually beating him on the field. This upcoming year, I think that happens, not just once, but twice. Georgia beats Alabama in September, beats them again in December. Then after that, the Nick Saban era in the SEC, for all intents and purposes, will essentially be done. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Hello to you, and thanks for being with us, no matter how you get to us today, live on video, 10 a.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and we are available as a podcast pretty much wherever you can find them, including posting the show each and every day to the world-famous DawgNation.com, and we really appreciate our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia for making it all possible. Now, I've told you about Pella Window and Door of Georgia before. They are kind of a nationally known company that can help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors, but what makes them even better than that is they have a locally owned branch right here in Georgia, which means you kind of get that family-owned service to go along with the nationally known resources of Pella Window and Door. And they also have a great offer for you right now. You can currently get 50% off qualifying installations or 0% APR for 48 months. And that offer is valid through March 12th, so you want to make sure you take advantage of that right now. They offer a best lifetime warranty, top-of-the-line equipment, and unparalleled expertise, and they're really easy to get in touch with. You can schedule your appointment, have them come out and kind of show you what they can do for you with better windows, better doors, what that might mean for you and your home. Website to go to, pellabranch.com. That's pellabranch.com, or give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom at 404-445-2979. That's 404-445-2979. Pella Window and Door of Georgia. It's viewed to be the best. All right, coming up here in a moment on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door, we're going to go and bring our buddy John Stinchcomb on. We'll have a very fun conversation with him as a part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. Before that, though, let's go around the doghouse. I'm going to change the subject and talk about something different here for a moment. One of the guys that I've liked kind of getting to know a little bit, and I don't mean personally because I've never met him, but learning more about his personality over the course of the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, is one of the UGA early enrollees, Major Burns. When Georgia produced the video and their official site put this out, where DJ Shockley interviewed all of the early enrollees, I thought one of the most interesting personalities put on display there was that of Major Burns. It was kind of a late addition to the 2020 class for Georgia. One of those guys we didn't talk a ton about in the months prior to National Signing Day, but a guy that sort of jumped in for a chance to be a part of this Georgia class. And in the way in which we've kind of gotten caught up and learned more about him, I've liked a lot of what I've learned about him, including his big description for why it was that he wanted to go to Georgia, what it was about Georgia that attracted him. I'm going to play this for you because it sets us up for something else interesting about Burns here right now. Let me give you a little bit of a reminder of the mindset that Major Burns brings with him to Athens.
Georgia's got a standard of winning. I'm a winning person. I like winning. I like competing. Sharks swim with sharks. So I just wanted to go somewhere where they would get the best of me, I would get the best of them. And what really jumped out to me was the academics here. Mm-hmm. They make sure we own it. They take care of us like with their children, teammates. All look after us like we brothers. So that stuck out, and I'm here now.
So apparently he likes the way he's being taken care of at Georgia. He mentions that from an academic standpoint. I would imagine that probably is a pretty nice thing to know you've got somebody helping you out to make sure you're getting to class on time and taking care of your studies. That's a real benefit that Georgia's able to provide the players that play in the program. But beyond that, that's not the only way apparently UGA is as capable of helping its incoming freshmen. You heard him say there that he likes to compete, that Sharks want to win with swim with Sharks, and he wants to be a winner. Well, apparently Major Burns is kind of already displaying that, because what was it that he came into Georgia at, for those of you that follow the recruiting stuff pretty closely? 170-something pounds, something along those lines. A lot of defensive backs from the high school level, about that weight. Typically when they come in, it's hard to hang a bunch of muscle and a bunch of weight on a young man like that when he's playing in high school. They just burn calories too fast. Well, apparently already at Georgia, according to something that Burns put on his Instagram story and got some attention this week. Let's go ahead and show that from Major Burns there. He's apparently got the scale now up to 191 pounds. So already gained a good bit away from like 170-something pounds to now 191 pounds just in the time that he's been at UGA, according to his Instagram story that he kind of put out there over the course of the weekend, which really kind of coincides a lot with what Chris Milton, Kendall Milton's dad, said about Kendall, about how he's already seen him put on and add a lot of weight here thus far. To me, this is, I think, interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, when a guy like Major comes in and quickly takes to a strength and conditioning program, quickly takes to a nutrition program as well as he has, I think that says something well about Major Burns. But I think this also ends up being a commercial for the next generation of recruit to potentially do the same thing. You know, in various years, it seems like being an early enrollee, showing up in December, some years that seems to be a little bit more fashionable, a little bit more in vogue than others. Georgia has seemingly had a lot more early enrollees for its 2019 class than it did for its 2020 class. The early, I think, talk about the 2021 class is a lot of the guys that Georgia are considering seem like they want to be early enrollees. Obviously, I get the idea of if you go to a high school that doesn't allow for that kind of, early semester graduation, I understand that. Or when you play multiple sports and you want to finish out that, I kind of understand that, I guess, a bit too. That was Trayvon Walker's story a couple of years ago. However, when you see the way that Major Burns has already transformed his body this quickly, when you hear those same stories about a guy like Kendall Milton who's in that, to me this becomes a pretty good advertisement for why you want to do the same kind of thing if you can. Be on campus at the end of the calendar year. Set yourself up for several months' worth of strength and conditioning work and be a part of that first spring practice ahead of your freshman season. To me, the recipe for playing early, that's the easiest way to get there. Now, other Georgia freshmen have shown you that you can still get on the field even if you don't go through spring practice and you don't have that early workout nutrition regimen. But, man, it makes it a whole lot easier to have that. Major Burns may be the latest example of that. So kind of a nice thing to show off here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Okay, we've got a lot more to do today, including right now some more thoughts on the hire of Scott Cochran and what's next for UGA. Let's get ready to do that as part of a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update as we bring on our buddy John Stinchcomb.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
All right, we'll get ready to say hello to John Stinchcomb here. Of course, always great to have him as part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. And John, a lot has happened around the world of Georgia since you and I have gotten a chance to talk. Georgia has made a pretty bold hire for its new special teams coach, the former strength and conditioning coordinator from Alabama. I know a lot of folks are curious to hear your thoughts on that, so I thought that's where we would open our discussion here today. I don't know how closely you followed Cochran's career before this, but certainly I know you noticed the attention it got when he made the move over here. What did you make of kind of maybe an outside-the-box thought from Kirby Smart on bringing a guy who doesn't have that on-field coaching experience yet, but has a tremendous reputation around college football? What did you make of the Cochran hire?
Well, I think there are people in sports that you just want around your team. And with Kirby's experience with Scott from his time in Tuscaloosa together, you find roles for guys like that. You just want them around your team. And you recognize the difference that it makes in so many different levels that, whether he's a refined special teams coach, no, probably not. But he's somebody that the value add for what he brings to your program is well worth it. You find spots for that. I think of a guy like Jonas Jennings and what he's done for the program, as player development. You want him around your team. You want him in front of recruits and young players that are trying to learn the ropes. I see something very similar with this ad in that, yes, I'm sure he's going to be under the title of special teams coach, but he brings so much more to the table than just coordinating how to pick up a twist up front on a punt protection. So it's a big ad, and really I like the assessment that y'all were discussing earlier, at least in the article, of the subtraction that it pulls away from Alabama.
Well, I also completely agree with you. You make the comparison to like a recruit where I think when you bring in players, you want to keep the mentality around the program of, hey, we're going to usher guys quickly through this program. The goal for most of the guys that come to UGA is a chance to play in the NFL. So we're going to bring them in, move them quickly through the program, get them to the NFL so we can replace them with other players who are just as talented. I think in coaching, it kind of works the same way. John, you're an upwardly mobile person. You're motivated for, professional advancement and, business growth and things like that. I think at Georgia, when you do have these guys who kind of want that to be a part of their coaching story, I just think it makes it easier to kind of keep that pipeline going. There are never going to be enough elite players to go around, and there are never going to be enough of the kind of coaches who are willing to put up with the schedule grind that a job like Georgia provides. So when you show a track record of getting Sam Pittman to become the head coach at Arkansas, getting Mel Tucker to become now head coach at Michigan State, other guys moving on to become coordinators and, things along those lines. When you do that, I just think it makes it easier to go out and find that next diamond in the rough. And frankly, I've been critical of Nick Saban for this. The fact that Saban didn't have that door seemingly open for Cochran in Alabama, that he only viewed him as valuable in the spot where he had been. No one wants to live under that kind of ceiling for the rest of their life. The fact that Georgia is going to be a little bit more, I guess, welcoming to folks who want to advance and want to grow. I think that says something pretty good about UGA to me.
Well, I like the opportunities that are presented at Georgia, and when you have success as a program, everybody gets the benefit from that. I think across the board you've seen with successful programs, it's good for players and it's good for coaches that they get more opportunities. And I'm not sure exactly what was going on in Alabama for Coach Cochran to decide that it's a better fit in Athens. I'm just grateful for it. If he wanted to be an on-the-field coach, I would be shocked to hear that Alabama wouldn't want to make that happen. I don't really care at this point. I'm just glad he's wearing red and black.
Yeah.
I know the respect that he has across the league in so many different levels, both from players and coaches and just folks in the business of college athletics, that they hold him in such high regard. It's a big pickup. I mean, he's well respected. He's got great rapport with players. He's known as a really great motivator. All things that you want in your program. So, under what title? I think you can make that work with the upward mobility. I mean, when you have team success, players are going to move on and coaches are going to move on. You've seen it before with Coach Tucker, Coach Pittman. So it makes sense for a coach to want to come and be a part of a program that's creating opportunities and has good opportunity for success. I mean, those are the two things that we're all looking for in life.
Yeah.
So why would it be any different?
Let me attempt to be fair and balanced here for a moment as part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update with John Stinchcomb. I've talked to other guests in the last week or so about the fact that for everything you do like about Cochran, he hasn't been in this role before. He hasn't been an on-field coach before. And for Georgia, whose goal for 2020, like a lot of these years, is kind of national championship or bust, it is a little bit of an outside-the-box thought to bring in someone to impact what is kind of a third of the game, having not had that job before, having not had that experience before. John, as a former player, how much of a concern should it be, or how much of a not big deal is it that Cochran doesn't have that kind of on-field coaching experience?
Well, I don't know if I'm sure there's plenty of Georgia fans out there that remember we haven't always had a special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
It's been a tight ends coach who also is in charge of special teams. So the fact that we have a carved out designated position in and of itself is progress, in my opinion. But it hasn't been a consistent mandatory position throughout football. So he's a capable coach. I think, does he have the background in it? No, but he's somebody you want around your guys. He's capable. The coaches have high respect for him, and I don't think that's going to be a big problem. I mean, as many drills that are run by the linebacker coach and the tight end coach when it comes to special teams, and knowing that he's a capable, high-capacity coach, it's something that I'm sure he'll pick up and bury himself in all the details this off season and be prepared. But I think this is one of those hires where you look at the whole picture and what he brings to the culture and what he's going to pour into that team, and you say it's a no-brainer.
It's our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update with our buddy John Stinchcomb, the former UGA All-American, here on the program today, DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. And, of course, John, you know, when we talk about that Marlowe's Tavern, one of the things that makes it such a great thing to experience this time of year is the house-made magic. Now, what does that mean? It means special care taken in all the ingredients used and all the different menu items. That means no microwaves, nothing frozen, nothing along those lines. It's all made with special care right there in the tavern that you're visiting, whether it be the food that you're eating, the drinks that you're enjoying, or whatever else. Marlowe's Tavern, famous for that kind of service, famous for taking that kind of special care to make everything taste so special and so good, whether it be the house made tomato bacon jam that goes on the tavern burger or the trout dip or anything along those lines. It's all of that truly chef-inspired food you can find with our friends at Marlowe's Tavern. Of course, it's great to have John Stinchcomb as part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update here on the program today. John, one of the things I was talking about before you joined us was Major Burns kind of showing off on his Instagram story the fact that he's already gained, I guess by my count, 15, 16 pounds since he's been at UGA. This is over the course of just really a few weeks of work. And once again, kind of as a former player who understands kind of, what these guys are going through and the rapid transformations that occur, Burns won't be the only one. I know that Kendall Milton's kind of already bragged about this a little bit in his own right. We see this happen each and every year. I guess, would you mind kind of describing what you think it kind of is like for these guys to go from a high school situation where they may be eating honey buns for breakfast every single day to, the college world now where they have their own special individualized nutrition plan and a strength and conditioning program designed scientifically to kind of get the best out of them? What kind of, what kind of transformation process is that like? And I guess just how magical is this, the way these bodies change so quickly?
I think every player leaving high school feels like, I'm working hard. I'm putting in the work, and I'm prepared for this next step. It's not going to be a big jump. And then you recognize how huge of a jump it really is, because everything you're doing is geared towards progress, physically, mentally. It is a significant jump, and some are more prepared than others, but it's still significant. And I think a big piece that you hit on is nutrition. The fact that now we're actually going to look at the calories you take in, and it's probably not the same 3,000 calorie, 4,000 calorie diet that you've been accustomed to.
Yeah.
Now everything is catered towards what can build muscle and trim fat and get you to that goal weight, and you partner that with elite training. I think that's another. If you're talking about the two Scotts, Sinclair and Cochran, the reason why that wasn't we've got a new strength coach is because of the level that Sinclair has taken our strength and conditioning program at Georgia. I mean, he's elite, and you've partnered that with Coach Cochran coming in, and he's now special teams. So I think the program that they have going over there, you've seen a lot of progression. I know there was a number of years where you'd watch players come in and there wasn't that same development athletically and physically. I mean, you're just passing the eye test, where some guys would stay pretty much the blobs that they showed up as.
Yeah.
And you can't say that anymore. I mean, there is a definite change in physique for the folks that are entering into Sinclair's program.
Is it as simple as saying this, that if you can be an early enrollee, that you should? Some guys academically are just still working on some credit hours in their second semester, their senior year. Other high schools won't allow it, so not everyone necessarily can be an early enrollee. But when you see the growth that happens before the first spring practice of that freshman year, if you had a son who was kind of in that same vein, would you push him to be the early enrollee? Is it as simple as saying that's a experience that you can't ever get back, and it gets you ahead of the game for early playing time and everything else?
I think it gives you a jump. I think there are a couple of exceptions to the rule, obviously. Andrew Thomas, I don't think he was
right.
A winter early enrollee.
Right.
So at a rare position where you step in at offensive line, he was able to do it and not having come to campus 6-8 months early. But I think for those guys that are looking to get an edge, it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get in the system and learn the culture more than anything, of the amount of time and work that it takes to be successful at the collegiate level. There is a high demand on your time that you're not accustomed to, and your focus is now to be a top student athlete, and there is a number of resources that will help you do that, and they also demand that you do that. So for those that are able and it fits their plan and what their desires are and their goals, if you're looking to play early, I think it's absolutely an opportunity worth exploring. I don't think it's right for everybody. I think for some that they're able to get the work in and also enjoy life and finish up that senior year and be with your family one more time. I mean, I'm telling you, it was almost shocking to hear, but you read Isaiah Wilson's transcript at the NFL Combine, and he's saying that one of the main reasons that he left early was to spend a little more time with his family rather than go to the bowl game with his team. And you realize that there's a lot going on in a player's life. And so for some of those teenagers that are just signed their letter of intent to play somewhere, I think you're recognizing that these opportunities are fleeting one way or the other. There's a lot going into these decisions.
Let me squeeze in one final thing before we let you go as part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. You mentioned the NFL Scouting Combine and watching that this past week and seeing all the attention that Jake Fromm got for every throw that he made, 40-yard dash and everything else. And by now, we've just kind of gotten used to, when you're the Georgia quarterback, the way that Fromm has been for the last 3 years, there is a ton of notoriety that you're going to gain while doing that. I guess the question I'm find myself answering is, when you evaluate how the next guy in line, what would look to be Jamie Newman, how he's going to do, I think we have a pretty good idea of what it looks like when Newman throws the football. He's got a track record. We've got a pretty good idea of what it looks like when Newman shows off his athleticism. We've seen some film of that. John, is it fair to say that in terms of how you handle how famous you're about to be as the Georgia quarterback, or really any kind of big-time player in any position at Georgia, quarterback maybe more I guess specific than anything else on this, is it fair to say that we don't know how you're going to fit into the attention, the limelight that you get it as a Georgia quarterback until you're in that spot when it comes to being Jamie Newman?
I think that's fair, and I also think it's fair to recognize that the quarterback position is one that receives a whole new level of scrutiny and praise and attention, unlike any other. And it's going to be different for Jamie Newman specifically, coming from Wake Forest. I respect the school, respect what they've done as a program, but it is nowhere close to what the attention that he's going to receive as potentially the starting quarterback at the University of Georgia. And I think he's going to have to make that adjustment. I'm not saying he's incapable of it. I mean, probably is going to be able to make that adjustment well, but there very much will be an adjustment to be made just because of the attention that gets. The fandom at the University of Georgia is special, and sometimes that can lead to players almost entering into a little bit of a love-hate relationship in it, because it's a lot. It's a lot on your plate, and you have to be able to adjust and still manage, which some players do better than others.
Quick recommendation on the way out the door. My favorite appetizer, not just at Marlowe's Tavern, but maybe in the entire city, is the shrimp and crab nachos. Think about this. Tortilla chip with shredded, robust crab meat all over it, plump shrimp on top of that, then melted cheese on top of that. It does not get any better than that. It's all made right there inside the tavern where you visit. It's part of that house-made magic that makes Marlowe's Tavern famous. John, thanks so much for being a part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update here today. We hope you have a great week, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again next week as well.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, and I leave salivating because all this talk of Marlowe's, I'm telling you, it reminded me of one of those Marlowe's matchups we did on site. I had a brisket burger.
Oh, yeah.
And it was memorable. So I got to find my way over to another Marlowe's soon so I can scratch that itch. Always a pleasure to talk Dogs football with you, B.A. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, John, it's great to talk to you as well. I'll talk to you soon.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, yeah, really good stuff as a part of the Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update with John Stinchcomb there. Always a lot of fun to be able to do. Let's talk about the rest of the SEC here for a moment, because there are some interesting going-ons there, and a lot of this does impact UGA in one way or another. So let's go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of our friends at Royal Caribbean. And, you know, one of the things I hear the most often about when we talk about Royal Caribbean are people who will come up to me and say, BA, tell me more about this Perfect Day COCHRAN. Exactly what is that? And it's really, I think, one of the things that has made Royal Caribbean such a trendsetter in its industry. A private island oasis right there in the Bahamas, kind of split in half. One side's your thrill side, one side's your chill side. So if you got, you know, young kids, teenagers, whatever else, or you just yourself or a young person at heart here, you're going to love the thrill side of Perfect Day COCHRAN with Daredevil's Peak. It's North America's tallest water slide. You got adventure pool. Wild, it's an obstacle course type thing, which is really, really fun. You've got the largest wave pool in the Caribbean. So many things that make the thrill side of Perfect Day COCHRAN one of the most fun places you can ever visit. And the thing that I've got to make sure you're aware of, you can't get there any other way than on a Royal Caribbean cruise. Perfect Day COCHRAN is exclusive to our friends at Royal Caribbean. So please contact your travel advisor and say, BA was telling me I got to get on these Royal Caribbean cruises. I got to go see Perfect Day COCHRAN. Or let me also make a recommendation for you there on that as well. You can contact my friends at the Cruise and Vacation Authority. Number to get in touch with them, 800-326-4971. That's 800-326-4971. Let them know you heard about them right here on DawgNation Daily. All right, let's do some SEC talk here for a moment. So Alabama has acted quickly to hire a strength and conditioning coach, and the guy they're bringing in is a guy, the honest truth is, with the exception of, like, say, Scott Cochran and Aaron Feld, who's at Oregon now, and obviously Scott Sinclair at Georgia, I probably don't know a lot of strength and conditioning coaches by name, so the chances were I was not going to know who Alabama's strength and conditioning coach hire was, but it is David Ballou from Indiana, who has big-time reputation, and honestly, I mean, you know, I like taking shots at Saban from time to time, and, you know, I made my case at the beginning of the show how I think that the Saban dynasty is about to reach its demise at Alabama. But I'm not going to in any way try to sugarcoat what it has been. It has been excellent. It has been the trend-setting, you know, organization for all of college football. So the fact they're making what is viewed to be a really good strength hire should not be a surprise. It's certainly not going to be a surprise to me. However, what you're also going to see, and most of this is going to come from rank-and-file Alabama fans, there will be some media there in the state of Alabama who tries to do the bidding of the Crimson Tide on this. This is being heralded as a revolutionary hire, and in some ways, you know, a guy who's more into the science, and, you know, some ways a guy who's more into the more cutting-edge trends. Alabama fans, the simps that they can be sometimes, you know, are trying to blame some of the injuries that have happened with, you know, players the last couple of years on the Scott Cochran strength and conditioning program. That's obviously ludicrous, but you're going to hear a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of revisionist history out there for how all of this plays out in terms of the replacement of Scott Cochran, the new guy, David Ballou, coming in. So worth paying attention to here. Alabama looks to have made a new strength and conditioning hire. Also worth paying attention to, for Georgia in its 2021 class, a lot of what's going to go on here is going to be around the defensive side of the ball. When you look at what Georgia's about to lose, a lot of what Georgia's going to lose is going to be on defense. But that doesn't mean which means then a lot of the 2021 guys that you bring in, it's going to be a class, I think, that probably goes heavy on the defensive side of the ball. But that doesn't mean there won't be some offensive names that we're talking a good bit about. That doesn't mean there won't be some of that, including Ajayi Hall, a wide receiver from the state of Florida, recently dropping his list of finalists here. I think we have this we can show for you here. The list of finalists for Ajayi Hall. You see Georgia there along with Arizona State, LSU, and Alabama for who he's considering. Kind of a nice little edit job there on Ajayi Hall. This is a guy that Jeff Santella's written about at DawgNation.com. When Jeff's been with us before, we've talked a good bit about this. You know, ultimately, in terms of where Georgia ranks on the list of finalists here, Georgia added a lot of receivers a year ago, so we don't really know, you know, quite how the 2021 receivers are viewing Georgia as of yet, but one of the names to know when it comes to skill positions for that upcoming class is Hall, and he has made Georgia one of his finalists there. By the way, speaking of Alabama, something else again that I thought was kind of interesting, Terrell Lewis, who's, you know, potentially a pretty big name in the upcoming draft, pass rusher. Only knock on him has been some injuries. He's dealt with that for a couple of years at Alabama, but like a lot of these guys do at the Combine, you know, we had Mike Griffith, Connor Riley in Indianapolis last week. They were asking a lot of the Georgia guys about their time at Georgia. You're going to have other reporters ask the other players about their time at their school, and Terrell Lewis obviously spending some time in Alabama. was asked, hey, tell us about your time there. Tell us about the losses that took place for the Crimson Tide a year ago, losing to LSU, losing to Auburn, ending a chance at a national championship or college football playoff opportunity for the Crimson Tide. And one of the things that Lewis mentioned as one of the reasons why, Alabama struggled there in that spot was because of what he called a lack of communication. And he even took that all the way up to the top in terms of the communication of signals on the field, the kind of defense you want to be in. And obviously there's a way to listen in on that and read into that it almost feels like a little bit of blame being put at the feet of defensive coordinator Pete Golding. Now, I've already told you before that when you watch the way Alabama fans responded to the hire of Charlie Strong as an analyst, it's easy to see that Alabama fans are still not quite so sure about Pete Golding yet. And we are only about a year or so away from the old coordinator, Tosh LaPoy, being completely scapegoated and blamed for the national championship loss to Clemson at the end of the 2018 season. I started the show today by saying that I think that Georgia is going to beat Alabama twice this upcoming year. And I think one of the things that makes me feel confident saying that is the way in which the Alabama reputation, the Alabama brand, has just evolved. This became more of a finesse team the last couple of years. Tua Tagovailoa throwing to Jerry Jeudy, throwing to Henry Ruggs, throwing to all those receivers. And in doing that, this became a team a lot less known for running the football. In fact, this past season, I would dare say Alabama wasn't great when it came to running the football. This is a team that the last couple of years has been a lot less known for defense than it has been. Now, Alabama fans will be quick to say, yeah, but some injuries may factor into them. That's certainly true. They played a year ago without Dylan Moses. But once you give away your physicality, once you stop running the football, once you stop playing dominant defense on a Saturday-by-Saturday basis, once you stop doing that, flipping the switch and getting back to that again is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So when you hear a guy like Terrell Lewis voicing what a lot of Alabama fans have been concerned about not really quite sure how the communication is right now with a kind of relatively inexperienced, unproven defensive coordinator in Golding, it only kind of plays into this, that Georgia seems to have a star on the rise in that job. Dan Lanning, that's a guy that Kirby Smart bet on, hired him as defensive coordinator, and it's been excellent. It's been stellar. But in this particular situation right now, Alabama, do they feel as confident about their guy? I think it remains to be seen about that. One more quick story here as we're cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean, and ironically it also involves Alabama at least a little bit. For those of you that follow the NFL draft, Tua Tagovailoa is pretty quickly becoming one of the most interesting names in this draft. The possibility that Washington, who drafted Dwayne Haskins from Ohio State a year ago, may also still be considering him. Joe Theismann spoke out against that. Of course, Theismann, the former Redskins great, has spoken out against that. But there is some talk there that Tua may be in play for the Redskins at 2. Is this a smokescreen? A lot of things like this seem to be. There's even some chatter. The South Florida Sun-Sentinel reported that the Dolphins weren't quite as enamored with Tua during their interview process as maybe some people thought they would be. So the most interesting name in the draft for the moment is Tua Tagovailoa, and following that story to see where it goes next and how much of this is real and how much of this is just typical pre-draft subterfuge. I think that's a pretty fun thing for the moment. We'll make that cruise around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door, I want to take a minute to talk about some sports other than football. Because I thought that Georgia had a really fun weekend with the other sports here this weekend. First of all, it was great to see Georgia get another basketball win against Arkansas. Dogs have now won 3 of 4 on the hardwood and had a chance to win the other one, South Carolina, in overtime this past week, had a chance to win that. I mean, ultimately, the one thing I was kind of hoping for does seem like it's going to be true, which is that Georgia's going to be fun to watch in the SEC tournament. I think Anthony Ant-Man Edwards is playing his best basketball at the right time. I think the team around him seems to be coming together pretty well. And, is this a team capable of winning the SEC tournament? No, I guess I wouldn't think that. But a team that, for the most part, even in losses, has been fairly entertaining this year, I think is even more entertaining at the right time as we head towards the month of March. So pretty fun stuff there. Diamond Dogs, maybe even more significant than that, 3-game sweep of Georgia Tech. A little bit different way of playing the Yellow Jackets this year. These have been midweek games the last few years, playing all a part of a weekend series, one in Athens, one in Atlanta at Rush Chandler, and then yesterday at Coolray Field, not playing at Truist Park this year, playing instead at Coolray Field there in Gwinnett. Georgia takes all 3 of those, the Diamond Dogs do against Georgia Tech. This is a very, very good baseball team right now, and I just think this sets up for an incredibly fun spring and summer for this group as they try to, push their way past a regional and hopefully make a run towards Omaha in the College World Series. When it comes to pitching and defense, this team certainly seems to have that. And will they, hit as much as they need to in the ones that really matter. Obviously, we'll find that out. But doing that against Tech here this weekend was certainly a great message to be sent. To say nothing of the Lady Dogs beating Florida. You always like when that goes down. Just a really fun weekend all the way around for UGA athletics, and the kind of thing that on a non-football weekend and kind of a lull before the real big uptick in 2021 recruiting, that was a welcome thing there. So basketball, baseball, and the tennis team got a win, a whole lot in between. Great to see a good weekend for UGA athletics. And as we get ready to wrap up this edition of our program, I want to remind you, speaking of the Lady Dogs, congrats to them for their win against Florida. We always like the idea of that, especially when it comes to football, because it has been a long time since those lousy, stinking Gators on the football field have been able to say they've had any success against the Georgia Bulldogs. In fact, how about a quick reminder of that? 1,220 days. That's how long it's been since the lousy, stinking Gators beat the Georgia Bulldogs. 1,220 days. It's our Gatorator Updater here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We appreciate all of you being with us here today. Don't forget, we're here for you every single day. And we're going to have a really fun week of stuff coming up as you have the really... You're going to blink your eyes before you know it's going to be spring practice. We're not too far away from that. So we're going to have a lot of coverage of the continued preparations for the beginning of the 2020 season. We'll do all that with you and see you back here again tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. All right, good to have you with us. Let's get ready to do our R.S. Andrews cool down, or as I should say, and on video. Great to be able to do all that for you and great to be able to be here. All right, so we do have a little bit of an update I guess I can give you here. Probably no real big surprise, but it looks like the G-Day games will be broadcast partially in the SEC network as part of a whip-around coverage from 2 to 4 p.m. on April the 18th. All right, so G-Day is going to be viewed in its entirety digitally on the SEC Network Plus and on and partially on TV on the SEC Network on April the 18th. So a little bit different kind of TV coverage for G-Day looking like coming up. So we'll learn more about this, but apparently the full G-Day not going to be available on regular television. It'll be SEC Network Plus for that. I guess April 18th, a crowded day for SEC spring games. They're going to try to get as much as they can. It probably makes for a better TV product overall to have a number of different games shown as opposed to the one game, which maybe gets a little boring for the average fan that's not a Georgia fan. But for Georgia fans who want to kind of follow every snap and see everybody who plays and everything else, it sounds like SEC Network Plus the way to go for that. So we'll keep our eyes on that. Of course, it's our R.S. Andrews School Down. Make sure you check out R.S. Andrews online. Cold at night, you want that heating system to be up to factory fresh specs. You need the R.S. Andrews $99 Mega Furnace Safety Check. That'll get that for you. You can find it online at rsandrews.com. And as I said before, it just costs you $99. All right, we're going to do about 10 minutes of comments. Then we got to roll on out of that. All right, let's get a few of them here, and we'll get ready to move on after that. Hope you're all doing well today. Matt Rugavina says, who has SEC Network Plus? Seriously? So I'm not super techie, but, I can watch the Diamond Dogs on SEC Network Plus. It's actually, assuming you have cable, you can watch SEC Network Plus. I think you have to have cable to watch it. But, so I've accessed it for the baseball game. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. It is different than watching it on TV, but it's not super hard. It's not super hard to find. I am a little bit surprised, though, that Georgia won't get a full window on TV coverage, as our buddy Michael Carvell has told us. Grant Gay says, do you know what time J.R. Reed ran in the 40? I don't. I am not 40-yard dash combine guy. That's not my thing. Not to say that it's not important for you to know. 4.55 for J.R. Reed in the 40. 4.55 for J.R. Reed in the 40, which I'd say is a pretty good time for a safety, right? That's a pretty good time, right? Yeah. So good for him. Shelton Tucker says, will you bet on the Alabama game? Listen, Shelton, I bet it with my reputation. Keith Fold says an underrated component to this upcoming Alabama game is the addition of Matt Luke. I think that's probably true. I think that's true. Brian Jones, thank you for the reminder on the 4.55. So pretty good job there for J.R. Reed on that. Barry Davis says, any predictions of the 2020 season? So, Barry, I started the show today by saying Georgia beats Alabama twice. I'll take that as my bold prediction for right now. Yeah, that's my prediction for right now. Let me pop over and get a couple YouTube comments, too. Hope you all had a good weekend, by the way. Hope you all had a good weekend. All right, let's see what else. I have no idea what people are doing on the YouTube page. Oh, let's see if there's anything worth reading on this YouTube page today. Doesn't appear to be. Oh, my. All right, let me just go back over to Facebook. Yeah, Ray Gasses on the subject of Alabama hiring Indiana's strength and conditioning coach. It's going to be really funny to watch like the revisionist history and all of this. You know, a lot of Alabama fans like, I'm glad they got rid of Scott Cochran. They needed some new blood in there anyway. I mean, there is nothing more ludicrous. And by the way, I am consistent on this. We had some folks a couple of years ago that tried to blame Gus Malzahn for a couple of injuries around Auburn. Like, this is one of the things that, like, media just gets wrong all the time. Not every event that occurs has a narrative attached to it. And so, like, when two guys get hurt within the same period of time, that's not a rash of injuries necessarily that is caused by someone, you know, doing something technically wrong. Bad luck just exists, and it's something you have to deal with from time to time. And so I said that when Auburn had a string of injuries. I'll say that when Alabama had a string of injuries. But it is not a surprise to see a lot of Alabama fans trying to lay the Dylan Moses injury and some of those things that have happened at the feet of Scott Cochran. That is the most Alabama fan thing in the world you could do. Derek Tillman, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Jason Murphy says, is Alabama playing Texas A&M? Yeah, as SEC West opponents, they play every single year. Tim Kilrain says, where can I catch some of those robust crabs? So the crabs themselves aren't robust. It's the amount of crab meat that gets put on the shrimp and crab nachos. That was the only adjective I could think of at the time. Maybe there would have been a better adjective to use. But, like, not shy with the crab meat is my point. Chad Clark, very nice play on words. Appreciate that. All right, what else? Joe Bryce says, does Georgia basketball have any chance to make postseason NIT play? I'd say they have a chance. The honest truth is I don't know how great of a chance they have. More than anything, I'm just sort of interested to see how they play in the SEC tournament. You know, can they, like, South Carolina would have been a great example of this. South Carolina is like a fringe bubble team. Had Georgia beaten them this past week, that would have been a great win. Like, it's one of those things of, great, maybe overstating things a bit. It would have been a very good win, right, to beat a team that still has something to play for. Ultimately, that's more valuable for me. Now, for a lot of these Georgia players who are coming back, a chance to get into the NIT would be, you know, extra practice. It's almost like, you know, the bad team that makes the bowl game gets the bowl practices. I guess the NIT would be a sort of a version of that. But one way or another, this Georgia basketball team has a chance to finish its season making you feel, because, you know, Rickshawn Hammonds is playing seemingly better, out of position, by the way, seemingly playing a little bit better. You've got other young guys kind of coming on at the right time. You know, this team has a chance to end its season in the looking ahead to the post-Ant-Man era, I always get that word wrong, looking ahead and being able to say, hey, they may have some building blocks in place to have a much better season next year than they had this year. Jason Bryan Lee says, BA, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident do you feel that Jamie Newman will live up to the hype? I hate to do it this way, but I'd put it at about a 5. I think that in terms of, if you want to talk about him, like the other day I saw him at 10-1 to win the Heisman Trophy. That seems pretty crazy right now. I sort of get where it comes from. That seems pretty crazy. Ultimately, do I think that he's a capable, competent quarterback? I do. You know, is he the kind of person? See, here's what you have. You have two wild extremes when it comes to Newman. You have non-Georgia fans who want to say, UGA has turned to Wake Forest quarterback. What a disaster that is in Athens. You have other people who say Jamie Newman was the blah, 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 blah from whatever, you know, analytics site they want to cite in that particular instance, and therefore he's going to be the greatest quarterback in the SEC. The probable truth is something in the middle. However, what I do feel confident in, even if I don't quite feel that Jamie Newman may be as good as his top-end projections suggest that he could be, I think this is a good year to have uncertainty at the quarterback position because most of the SEC teams are in the same boat. Even the teams that bring back starting quarterbacks, you know, Bo Nix was not perfect in every game. Kyle Trask from Florida, not perfect in every game. LSU, completely unknown at quarterback. Alabama's got some interesting names competing for a job, but for the most part, still unknown at quarterback. So Georgia having a little bit of an unknown in Jamie Newman, if you're going to have that, the SEC in 2020, I think is a really good year for that to occur. So I'd probably go just south of these crazy top-end projections for Jamie Newman, but also go well ahead. I think Newman has a much better year than a lot of these lower-end projections from sort of, trollish, hating fans would give you. I think the truth around Newman somewhere in the middle. He has about a, something approximating a 50% chance of being a very good quarterback, and he has, I would say, about a 50% chance of being about what Georgia quarterbacks have been the last couple of years, which is, maybe good, not great. What else is going on? Robert Barnes says the Dog spring game will be on the internet. You can go to the University of Georgia website and click on the game. Yeah, that's actually probably how I access the SEC Network Plus, is I do go through the official site to get there. And really, it's not that hard to do. Now, it'd be, for me, better to just use the remote control and just click a TV channel. If I was at home, I would agree with you on that. But actually, SEC Network Plus is not that hard to access. And the trade-off in all this is, even if it's, not as fun to have, this on SEC Network Plus, the way in which they've used SEC Network Plus to make every baseball game available now and to make all these other sporting events available now, I mean, I do think that the presence of the SEC Network and the impact that it's made on the other non-football sports, I think it's undeniably good. I think it's undeniably been good. The spring game, you'd like a little bit more coverage for, but, listen. For the most part, the SEC Network has done a pretty good job there. Spencer Mortha says he thinks that Pickens will make Newman great. Listen, when it comes to returning receivers, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better one right now, I think. Rhodey Williams says, need to think about the G-Day game being played at night. Will be a scorching hot one, plus give a chance to see the lights. Rhodey, I could definitely listen to the idea of G-Day being played at night. I could definitely listen to that. Bob Garrison says the Combine showed some high school highlights of Isaiah Wilson as a kind of a wildcat quarterback. I would like to have seen that. I've heard tell of that, but I don't know if I've ever actually seen the videos myself. Shelton Tucker says that Newman was a 50% passer in 3 years at Wake Forest. He had a lot of games where his completion percentage was higher than that, though, and obviously he was not working with the same talent at Wake that he's going to be working with at Georgia. That's why it's reasonable to assume the performance will be better, for sure. All right, we're going to get ready to get off the air. Let me try YouTube again to see if things have gotten any better over here. Nope. Doesn't appear to be. Mike R. says that I think Cochran's an overachiever in all things football. He'll be a great on-field coach. Mike R., I actually almost 100% agree with you on this. Putting aside the sort of Georgia versus Alabama squabble that the Cochran move brings about, if you just sort of isolate this variable to just view Cochran, the odds are someone whose motor revs as high as his, the odds are he probably will be a good coach if that's what he wants to put his mind to doing. It seems like he's going to do that. And for the most part, it could be that this doesn't last very long at Georgia, right? Because, he's special teams coach now. You may want to move on and be something else at a certain point in time, and you may have to feel like you have to go somewhere else besides Georgia to get that. There's a lot of that in the coaching world. But in terms of just sort of betting on Cochran, I believe I would bet on him as being a successful coach. He has seemingly said that, or at least those around him have said he wants to be a head coach at a certain point in time. The idea of him doing that, I think the energy is probably the most important resource when it comes to things like this. It's not your knowledge, it's not anything else. It's just, do you wake up with the stamina required to get the job done? And I think that Cochran probably does have that. So, yeah, I think that's probably well to say. Gavin Sellers says, is it fair to say that Newman's progression at Georgia, so now we're getting some good YouTube comment. It's fair to say that Newman's progression at UGA is a testimony to our coaching staff and development. Gavin, that's what I'm trying to say. So I'm glad that you're bringing this up. I'm trying to put the Georgia coaching staff in the spotlight over this. I think there's some things they could have done for Fromm they didn't do. And I think that they have the opportunity to make Jamie Newman into something pretty impressive. Now, that's not to take the responsibility completely off of Newman, but it is to put a lot of that pressure and that responsibility on the coaching staff to get the most out of him. I don't know that Georgia's had the best offensive game plan, nor do I know that the Georgia players have gotten the best level of technically specific coaching points the way that you may see them getting on the defensive side of the ball. I just think there's a little bit of a difference in how the offensive side's been coached compared to how the defensive side's been coached. So hopefully in the new Todd Monken era, and who Monken's going to have a chance to have work with him, including a guy like Buster Faulkner as now we know a analyst, not an on-field coach, hopefully these guys in this place will be able to provide that. So, yeah, I do think Georgia's got a responsibility to coach up Jamie Newman. I think they had a responsibility to coach up Jake Fromm last year, and I don't know that it always happened as well as it could have. All right, what else? Jalen Jackson says, do you think the pressure is on Glenn Schumann to develop one of these edge five-star linebackers into a superstar pass rusher? Well, so it's Lanning who's the outside linebackers coach, Schumann who's the inside linebackers coach. And ultimately, when it comes to the pass rush and things like that, I think at Georgia, this comes down to a coaching philosophy, right? You can coach your way into more sacks. You can kind of coach your way into more pass pressure. And I think that Georgia, very successfully, mind you now, but Georgia has kind of chosen to go about its business a little bit different when it comes to that overall philosophy. So for the lack of sacks that you've seen, I don't know this is about someone not being developed as much as it is Georgia has just kind of, to grossly oversimplify the situation, has chosen to kind of, I guess, sort of play contain on the defensive side a bit. I'd love to see them be more aggressive on that, as you kind of allude to. There's a lot of raw talent that would give you seemingly the freedom to do that if you want to, and this year I hope that's what happens. Kevin Wilson says, I'm assuming not the Ohio State offensive coordinator, but Kevin Wilson says, what's the Gatorade replicator to now? 1,220 days. 1,220 days. No, we're going to get ready to go. Let me go back to Facebook for one more thing before we get out of here. Bob Garrison, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Let's see if there's another comment to read. Matt Rukavina on the subject of the 2015 quarterback situation. Yeah, I think one of the, I say this as someone who's a huge fan of Rick's, but one of the knocks a little bit was that Georgia would occasionally kind of get caught without a quarterback, fully developed, fully ready to go. And if you're trying to maintain a consistent pattern of winning year over year, that's something you've got to be able to do. So I think we saw some of that, unfortunately, at various times during the Rick era. A guy who did a lot of things really well, but had he been more successful in passing the baton from one quarterback to the next, I think you would have seen even more winning take place there. All right, so we got to get ready to go. Thanks for being a part of our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Really appreciate that. Of course, for R.S. Andrews, whether it be air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electrical, story after story, they've been delivering smiles. They can deliver a smile for you, but you've got to check them out online at rsandrews.com. You'll have a great day. I'll see you back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. for another edition of DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. For more DawgNation videos, check out youtube.com/DawgNation.